Hello? Okay, am I on? Is this thing on? Hello, everyone. I look terrible, but hello. Okay, we got a little bit of music left. Everything is everywhere. I'm not organized right now. Okay, make sure that goes down. Oh, I was gonna say something on Twitter. Oh well, that's okay. Not that anybody looks that anyways. Hi, boo-boo. The cat may or may not make an appearance on stream. To everyone who doesn't know, I have a cat now. She's my best friend's cat, Sarah. Bring me the kitten, show her. Boo, do you want to get up here? Come here. She's shy. She knows about cameras. She just knows. And demands it. What have I missed, by the way? It seems like it's busy up in here. Lemon Loaf Cool J. Be right back, going to the courthouse. Okay. Be safe, CJ. Come here, boo. Come here. Come here. Okay. Hello. Here's the cat. Oh, she probably hates me right now. He's changing his name. Oh! Okay, oh, I think she may already want to go away. Hello, kitty. Cat looks so excited to be there. She doesn't like being picked up or held, is what I understand. But she likes to be cuddled. So, goodbye, precious kitten. Yes. Here. There she is! Hi, Boo! You've made your streaming debut. See, she's already looked away. She knows. She knows what's happening. Okay, Boo has made her streaming debut. You have to meet your mom for dinner soon. Well, that sounds like fun. Oh, you guys, I don't know if you know who Lewis Black is, but we're going to see him tonight. He's in Oklahoma. And Keegan loves Lewis Black. So we got tickets and we're going with my cousin and her fiance. And it should be fun. So I should probably get started with the stream. Because I don't know what time I need to pick Keegan up. Because we have some errands to run before we... Don't know who that is. He's a comedian. He's an angry man. Boot top song stream channel win? What? Hi, Rob, by the way. Oh, I need to put my phone so it stops going off. Okay. He's been on the Daily Show and stuff. This is true. He's been to my hometown a bunch. He's from New York, isn't he? I think he's from New York, so that makes sense. Should I catch up here on the... Oh, all the hosts. Thank you, V, Terry, Riddy. It's okay for lurking. Welcome for lurking. Hi, Rob. Packing for Disney. Boo is purring. I don't know if you can hear her. Probably not. Pack tonight. Have jury duty tomorrow. We leave Saturday. That's still very exciting. Hi, In. Cat butt. Oh, thank you for the host, Nicole. This more fan than I usually see anywhere. Okay. Waves to all in yellow. You lost 2 highlighters. Lemon Loaf. I like that name. It's cute. Thank you, Terry, for saying that I always look great, even though it's very much not true, but, you know, whatever. Yes, you may make an appearance. I'm glad you guys got to see Boo. Okay, anyways, good comedian. I am glad. I've never oh, you've seen Bo Burnham live? I've never seen a comedian live, so this will be interesting. But it's Lewis Black, so I expect it to be really good. I have high hopes. Stephen Lynch and Craig Ferguson. I don't know who Stephen Lynch is. Hi, Paige, by the way. Hi, Rob, by the way. Not me yet. She knows every time. See, she looked away immediately. She just knows about cameras. I do have some photos I can share, though. I just watched them from the safety of my YouTube screen. Yeah. I named it Lemon and V gave it the last name of Loaf. Oh, Lemon Loaf. I love it. He's a singing comedian. Oh, okay. Camera shy kitten. I feel like I wouldn't laugh just because I'm in public. What? What are we laughing about? Where are you, CJ? Are you actually at the courthouse? My hair is gross too. I apparently need to wash my hair. I'm sorry guys. Things have been busy. By busy, I mean I've been sleeping. I think CJ is saying if he's at a comedian show IRL he wouldn't laugh. Oh, due to being in public. Okay. I'm definitely at the courthouse right now and it's hilarious over here. Just give Boo some sunglasses and it will be fine. It's a girl, by the way. Boo is a girl. Aren't you? Yes, you're a girl. I think she's very excited to be on my lap, but at the same time my lap's not big enough for her, so she can't lay down all the way. So I don't know how this is going to work out in the long run. 7 life sentences. CJ at the courthouse. Don't you know CJ stands for criminal justice? That's true. Oh, did my music go away already? We have lost our music. Wait, what? What is happening? It's playing. Maybe it was a song transition and I wasn't paying attention. Okay. I didn't know that, but now I do. Thank you, Terry. If CJ and Tara were a comedy duo, I would go watch. I would definitely watch, and I would laugh even in public. Crimmy? Crimmy. Crimmy. Kamimimidi. Kamimimidi. I can't even say that. I say it wrong one time and then I can't repeat it. Cry me a river. Oh, cry me a river. Oh, cry me a river. Okay, I'm gonna stop before I embarrass myself more. Terry is too funny for me, so I don't know if that would work, but thank you, man. I think it would be fabulous. You guys can improv. Boo, what do you think? She's trying to lay on my arm, but I need my arm to read. This isn't gonna work. I need like a stool to make my lap bigger. That didn't make sense. Stool sample. Oh, what do you guys think of my new Christmas setup here? I got a nut. Well, okay, oh, I just realized my bit cup is in a very strange place. Stool sample. CJ, you already know I think you were right. I think CJ is pretty funny too. I love it. Bit cup, where is my bit cup? I need to move it. It's in a... That's a very strange place too, because it's between his legs. I don't know where to put my bit cup. Probably there. Does that look okay? Make it a little bit smaller. Boo is like, why are you not petting me? I still feel like that's a really weird place to put my bit cup. I don't want to move my camera though, because I have to move, well, webcam? Oh, Boo left. She's like, I'm done with this, you're not touching me anymore. I'm not happy with you, human. Okay, I can adjust this a little bit. Where are you going? I don't know where she's going. And the follower thing. Don't mind me. No. Sorry, I'm not talking to you, boo. Does that look right? We're gonna go with that. Yep, that's what's happening now. Webcam, the bit cup, I'll adjust it a little bit. There. Now it has a little bit... Oh, there! You can see it, like, it's like on the table, you know? There. Okay. I think that works. That looks good. That looks right? Okay. I don't know where Boo's going. I don't know how to have a cat, you guys. I need to be taught how to have a cat. But she's very much she's just really chill and laid back. So she doesn't, I mean, she just wants cuddles and food. That's really all she cares about. Oh my goodness. Test, woo! It works! Thank you, Riddy. Welcome for testing the bit cup. Looks good. I like it. Paige should play Fort Meow. What? Stool sample became a urine sample for the Nutcracker? Welcome for Steving. Put it on his head. That might actually look cute too. I don't know, it's not super clear. What do you guys think of... I need somebody to test again. The bit cups on the Nutcracker's head. It looks kind of weird because of the mistletoe thing, garland thing. Or in his hand. Wow, Riddy's cheered a lot. Leave the cat alone and let it snuggle you and feed it. Okay. You should play Fort... Oh, it's actually a game? Okay, send me a link. Oh, I missed welcome for Steving, but welcome for welcoming for Steving. Hi, Shroom, Lexi, thank you for the host. Oh, now my Streamlabs stuff is off. Oh, okay. Have a good time. Tell your mom we said hi. And I follow her on Instagram. And I always forget that it's her. Because I'm like, who is this random person that I'm following? But it's your mom. So now I do remember. Have a nice stream. Sorry for leaving. That's okay. I appreciate you being here any amount of time. Oh, look, a stream. Hi, Lexi. How are you? Oh, I love that. Okay, bye for reals. Okay, bit cup on the Nutcracker's head or not? Thank you for shouting out, Lexi. Yes, I'm sure everyone here is following, but you should follow. Anybody that's shouted out pretty much should definitely be followed. Okay. 1 for bit cup on the Nutcracker's head. 2 for the bit cup in that space between the webcam and the Nutcracker. It actually was pretty good on the table. Terry, you were totally trolling me on GOW? God of War. Oh, Anne was last playing Ghost Dogs. That's awesome. Played and seen less of the game than you have. My feet are cold. Head or table? I just don't know. Head or table? I guess I could test it myself. Head or table? I'm spending way too much time on this, you guys. Possibly 2. Okay, 2 is table. Yeah, you can just say head or table. Flip a coin. Okay, if nobody else says anything, it's going on the table. Heads or tables. Actually, we may have a flip a coin thing in the Streamlabs stuff. Let me see. Mini games? Duel, free boss battle, poll, betting, events, mod tools, currency, counter. I don't know. Anyways. Okay, we're just gonna leave it on the table. That's what's happening here. How's my music going? I'm about to run out of music. Trying to decide what music next. We'll do this next. I think Boo is using the litter box. I think that's what's happening here. I don't have it on a queue. Okay, we're going to go ahead and switch over the music because I don't want to worry about it when I'm reading, so please ignore the ad that's happening right now. Okay. Alright, hopefully that's good. Let me know how the volume is because I'm not entirely sure. I don't know what you guys are talking about, so I'm just gonna, the kid was cute. Yeah, I don't know what you guys are talking about. So, okay, let's get started with the book now that I've been live for 30 minutes and I haven't started. Volume sounds good. Okay, great. Ghibli music, yes. You're gonna get in trouble with that mouth. So, we left off on a cliffhanger, as usual. Nancy blacked out. Also usual. She got carried away by the hoodlum gang, or I don't know who they are, but they're not good people. And she's now blacked out. So that's where we left off. There's a book? Yeah, there is! Imagine that! And I want to finish it so we can get to my next book, which is The Nutcracker. And I'm very excited to read that because I want it to be different. I want to read it differently. I want to make voices for each character. I just want to be more creative with it. Hi, Boo. Meow. Do you hear her? Say something again. Oh, your foot got stuck. Did you go potty? I think you did. I think you did go potty. She's a good girl. She's so chill, you guys. She's a really good cat. Did you poop? It kind of smells like you maybe pooped. Did you step in your poop? What's happening here? Do you have poop on your butt? Can I see your butt? No, she's not letting me see her butt. My Wi-Fi is unhappy over here, so I'm gonna drive and perhaps it'd be better. Oh, okay. Be safe driving. Poop stream. What is happening here? Be safe driving, Riddy. That darn hoodlum gang. I'm just trying to decide what to do with Boo, if she's gonna try to get on my lap or not. She may be vocal while I'm reading, I don't know. We get her litter scoop today, so that's very exciting. I had to order a litter scoop because we don't have one, so. I don't think that was on my porch, but I should probably go check at some point. Well, she's just sitting there for a second. Okay, so we are on chapter 14. It's called The Matching Necklace. As Nancy's eyes fluttered open, she saw Bess's anxious face bending over her. "Oh, thank goodness!" Bess exclaimed. "She's coming to." George and Mrs. Corning stood at the other side of the bed. "You're in your room, dear," said Mrs. Corning. "How do you feel?" Nancy sat up, frowning. "My head aches, but otherwise I'm all right. What happened?" "The boys found you on the driveway," said George. "The gang got away." She explained that the boys had seen 3 men scuffling, and finally one had been carried off through the woods. By the time the boys had rescued Nancy, their search for the others was hopeless. "They took Morgan, then?" Nancy asked. "I was afraid of that." She told how she had been pulled away from the houseman. "Lucky the thug didn't know it was you," said George, "or you'd have been kidnapped too." "The boys are waiting in the kitchen," Bess put in. "I'll go down and tell them you're awake." "Let's all go," said Nancy. "I think I could do with a glass of milk and some crackers, if you don't mind, Mrs. Corning." The woman's face broke into a smile, and she said, "That's the best news I've heard yet. Now I know you're feeling better." Boo is going somewhere. As Bess and George served cake and glasses of milk, Nancy and the boys exchanged stories. Dave raised his glass of milk. "Here's to General Drew." The others echoed the toast enthusiastically. "I guess I wasn't such a good general tonight," said Nancy. "I certainly lost the battle." "The campaign's not over," Bert told her cheerfully. Ned smiled and patted Nancy's shoulder. "Better luck tomorrow." Mrs. Corning cleared her throat. "Nancy, dear, I'm afraid we had better—" "Oh, please, Mrs. Corning, I know what you're going to say, that I'd better give up the case. But please give me another day to find out exactly what's going on at Larkspur Lane." Ned and the others backed up Nancy's plea. Mrs. Corning hesitated. "Well, all right, but we can't wait longer than tomorrow night." "I'll do my best to solve the mystery by then," Nancy said quietly. To herself, she added, "And no mistakes, Nancy Drew." Next morning, the girls again started out early. As before, Nancy hid in the back of the car, and George drove. The sky was overcast, but Nancy's spirits were light. Some miles from the lake, she took the wheel, her eyes shining with excitement. "I don't see how you can be so cheerful," Bess grumbled. "You were knocked out last night, and now you're going into more danger." Nancy smiled. "I never felt better." Familiar with the way now, she was able to make good time to the spot where the sign L.S. Lane marked the battle line. "We're in enemy territory now," she remarked. "From now on, caution must be our password." Nancy drove past the half-concealed driveway and into the woods, where she parked the car behind a tangle of creeper and bittersweet. "No one will notice it here," Nancy said. "Now let's strike through the woods ahead and see how close we can come to the house without using the road." Cautiously, the girls worked their way around bramble and bush until the roof of the gatehouse came into view. They crept closer, and looks of dismay came over their faces. Tilted back in a chair against the gatepost was a man whom Nancy assumed was the gatekeeper. At his feet lay a brindled Great Dane, his tongue lolling and his eyes alert. Nancy gasped. "That's the beast that tackled me at the flower show," she whispered. "Let's hope he doesn't scent us." Okay, I don't like this representation of Great Danes because Great Danes are like the sweetest dogs on the planet. They're not about to, tackle you unless they're excited to see you and they don't have any manners. George said, "There's certainly no chance of getting in here. Let's go on." Nancy led the way to the right, still well within the trees, always keeping the tall fence with its border of larkspur in view. After trudging through the woods for a quarter of a mile, the girls found that the fence turned to the left. It continued in a straight line up the shallow slope along the flower-lined enclosure. "Ugh, it's rough traveling," Bess shuddered. "I'm afraid of snakes." "Want to wait here?" George asked. "I certainly do not," Bess retorted. "I'd be scared to death by myself." Smothering her fears, Bess followed Nancy and George through the tangled undergrowth. At one point, they came to a place where a clump of trees partially concealed the house. Nancy called a halt for rest and consultation. She and George sat down. "This wouldn't be a good spot to climb the fence," George observed, leaning back on her elbows. "You'd rip your skirt on that barbed wire." Nancy looked at her in surprise. "You'd do more than that, don't you see?" she asked, pointing to the top of the enclosure. "I see a fence and 2 strands of barbed wire stretched along the top," George replied. "Notice how the wire is fastened to the supporting posts. It's attached to little porcelain knobs. What does that have to do with it?" "Those knobs are insulators, which means the wire is charged with electricity. If you touch it, you will probably set off an alarm and get a bad shock besides. You could be killed." George gave a low whistle. "It's a regular fort," said Bess. "Yet how peaceful it all looks." Through the wire fence, the girls could see other flower gardens, occasional clumps of trees, and a view of the rear of the gatehouse. It was truly a lovely spot, except for the sinister strands of charged wire. "Rested?" Nancy asked. "Let's go." Since they were now approaching the house, the girls moved even more warily. Bess stepped gingerly, afraid of putting her foot down on a snake. "It would be just like those people to let a couple of thousand rattlesnakes and copperheads loose around here," Bess muttered. "Ugh!" The worried girl cried suddenly and jumped sideways, clutching at her cousin. Caught off balance, George stumbled and fell, giving a muffled yelp. "What happened?" Nancy whispered excitedly, turning back to them. "I stepped into a hole and I think my ankle is sprained," George said, her face white. Nancy's heart sank. If any of them should become helplessly injured, detection would certainly follow. "Oh, it's all my fault," whispered Bess. "I'm sorry, George. I thought I stepped on something alive." Her eyes filled with tears. George managed a grin. "Take it easy. I'm not dying." Nancy knelt beside George and with deft fingers felt the injured ankle, wishing that Dr. Spire were with them now. "I'm sure it's not broken," she said softly. George rubbed her ankle gingerly. "Go on, you two. I'll wait for you here." "You sure you're all right?" Nancy asked. "Yes. Go on, please." Nancy and Bess resumed their cautious advance to the top of the rise. There they had a full view of all the grounds. Surrounding the house was a wide lawn with gravel walks and flower beds. In the rear was a huge meadow which Nancy surmised was used as a landing field for the airplane. The craft was not in sight. Just below the brow of the hill, and connected with the house by a long arbor, was a group of outbuildings. A carriage house, evidently converted into a garage, a good-sized barn, and a chicken yard. "Listen," Nancy said, raising a finger. "I heard cooing." "Pigeons!" Bess exclaimed. The girls moved ahead until they were behind the carriage house, where they saw a small wooden building which had no window on their side. Here they rested in the shade until aroused by soft cooing and the sound of a man's voice. "You're getting better," the listeners heard through the wooden walls. "I guess you'll be able to work again if we keep you warm with this electric light. That'll cure you." There was more cooing. Then the unseen man said, "You ought to be ashamed taking a couple of days getting to the boss's place and arriving there lame at that. And why did you go to the Drews, you half-witted barnyard goose?" A door closed and all was silent. "Did you hear what that man said?" Bess asked with a catch in her voice. "He mentioned your name." "Yes, that was the man I met at Tucker's estate. I recognized his voice," Nancy said as she walked ahead. Once past the outbuildings, the girls saw a lichen-covered sundial surrounded by a grassy court. In it stood a number of wheelchairs, each occupied by an old lady. A large woman in a nurse's uniform had her back to the girls. She seemed to be administering to one of the elderly women. "It looks like a real nursing home," Bess whispered. "Perhaps our suspicions are all wrong." Nancy put a finger to her lips. The nurse turned and walked toward the fence. "That's the woman who stole my handbag," Nancy exclaimed softly. "The one who took the bracelet?" "Yes, she's in league with Thorne and Tucker, I feel sure." "One of those old ladies may be Mrs. Eldridge," Bess said, "but how can we find out?" "I don't know yet, but I'll think of something," Nancy replied. "Meanwhile, we'd better go back and help George to the car. If she were discovered, she'd have no way to escape." The girls hurried back to their companion, and the three made their way down the hill. George limped along as quickly as she could, but progress was slow. When they had nearly reached the gatehouse, the girls paused, and George sat down on a stump to rest. Suddenly, Nancy seized Bess's arm and pointed among the trees. On the other side of the wire barrier was an old woman dozing in a wheelchair. "Stay here," Nancy whispered. "I'm going closer." Bess clung to her friend's arm. "No! Suppose they catch you." "I must talk to that old lady," said Nancy. "She may be able to help us." Nancy crept cautiously toward the fence. When she was a few feet away, still screened by bushes, she stifled the gasp. The elderly lady wore a necklace which looked like the gold bracelet Dr. Spire had given Nancy as a clue. "The missing Mrs. Eldridge," Nancy murmured excitedly. End of chapter 14. And give me a second, I'm gonna go check on the cat, because I smell something funky. So, maybe it's just the litter box, I don't know. I'll be right back.
Stinky poos. You have very stinky poos. Yeah, I need to clean your litter box, but I need the scoop. Yeah. Woo! I'm gonna spray. Okay, you're all good.
Okay, I don't... What? My husband isn't home. He's at work. But hi, Joni. Welcome for joining. Glad to see you. Hope you're doing well. I was checking on the cat. She did poo in the litter box. It was just very, very stinky. I'm not familiar with the smell of cat poo, so I just wanted to be sure she didn't, like, poop in our bed or something. Okay, hello. Let me catch up. Meow. Hi. What are you doing? Ron. Hi. Beware the marsh rat. Ron probably likes that scene, being that the horse dies and all. Rob. She's Ron and Sharon. Sharon is dead. Just call me Ron. I stabbed her with a butter knife, then fed her poison tea. Also, horses aren't really my bag. That's more a sea thing. The horse dies, though, so you're a fan, no? It's electric. There's a snake in her boot. It's gonna get squished. I would be scared to get old, and then everybody always says old every single time they reference me. But you'd be the cool old guy, right? I don't know. The cool old guy that plays piano. Oh, you were joking. Okay. Hey, Tom. Would be fun if you talked to your husband like that. You have very stinky poo. I probably have said that before. Let's be honest. How are you doing, Tomas? It's good to see you. I'm probably butchering your name. Or do you say Tomasz? Is it... I can't speak Czech, so I'm not sure. But I know you say we can just call you Tom, but I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just rambling. I probably had a lot of caffeine or something, because I had a bunch of tea. We're roasting my husband. I wonder if he's here. Nope, doesn't look like he's watching. Okay. That's probably good. Hello, I'm alright. I just woke up, actually. Oh, how'd you sleep? I hope you had a nice sleep. Maybe I need to get, pet-friendly smelly spray. The second attempt was pretty close. That's why I forced people to call me Tom. Oh, okay. So Tomasz is like the more accurate pronunciation. But yeah, I don't want to keep saying it wrong. Okay, shall we continue with the book? I should probably check and see if... We need to make plans with my cousin. You're used to it. Yeah, we need to make plans for tonight, so kind of need to pay attention to my incoming texts. Close to 5. Okay. 4 hours. That's not nearly enough, though. I hope you can get more sleep than that soon. I've been probably sleeping too much, so... Oh, I don't think I've taken my pills today. I should do that. I'm telling Keegan about how Boo makes stinky poos. Oh, thank you for shouting out, Tom. Everyone should follow Tom as well. Don't Starve Together. I haven't played it. Okay, she's just sitting here. Chilling. Oh, it's a good thing I texted my cousin because she forgot that Lewis Black was tonight. What is the plan? I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what time things start. Keegan said, good thing I can't smell. He has a terrible nose. He can't smell anything. Okay. Okay, I will answer them in a little bit. On to the story. We're on chapter 15. The chapter is called Daring Plans. Do I dare go closer? Nancy wondered, watching the woman behind the fence. Just then, the old lady awakened and for a moment sat up straight in her wheelchair. Oh dear, she said. I guess I dreamed I was... Her wrinkled chin twitched and she leaned back with closed eyes. Tears crept from under her lids. Nancy was about to speak when she spotted a white figure hurrying down the hill. The nurse. So there you are, she said harshly, drawing near the old woman. I thought so, trying to hide again. A sob escaped the elderly patient. Come now, stop that crying, the nurse commanded. If you act like a baby, you'll have to be treated like one. The old lady lifted a fragile blue-veined hand in protest, but let it drop limply. Very well, Mistress Contrary. You may sit there for half an hour, the nurse snapped. Lucky for you I'm tender-hearted, or I'd take some of your privileges away. See that you're here when I come back. See that you're here when I come back. She strode up the hill. As the patient closed her eyes wearily, Nancy edged closer. Mrs. Eldridge! Mrs. Eldridge! The old lady's eyes snapped open and she looked wildly about her. Here I am on the other side of the fence behind the trees, Nancy said. Listen closely, I will bring you help. How do you know my name? Who are you? Mrs. Eldridge whispered. Nancy moved closer. Quickly she told the woman who she was, then explained how she had identified her. Mrs. Eldridge clasped her thin hands. Bless you, child, she said, but you can do nothing. Yes, we can, said Nancy, speaking with confidence, but you must be brave and ready to follow instructions. Bess and George had moved up to Nancy, who quickly introduced them. We'll all help you, Mrs. Eldridge, Bess said. You can trust Nancy. George spoke cheerfully despite the pain in her ankle. The old woman smiled. What brave young girls! Her chin lifted and a glint came into her eyes. All right, I'll do my part. I don't know what's happening with my voice here. Nancy glanced uneasily up the hill. We'd better stay out of sight while we're talking. The girls stepped back and crouched down behind the brush. Tell us where your room is, Bess urged. We'll get you out, then call the police and they can rush the place. No, no, exclaimed Mrs. Eldridge. We've all been warned that if strangers try to enter the grounds, we'll be locked in the cellar. The police would find you, George said. Yes, but some of the women here are heart cases. Many of them cannot stand the shock. Hush! Dr. Bell is coming. Bell? Thought Nancy, recalling the Bluebell code message. Quickly, the girls slipped back among the trees and watched. Striding down the slope was a tall, distinguished-looking man in a black suit. He had smooth gray hair and a pointed beard. He spoke in honeyed tones to the old woman. Well, well, what has upset our dear patient? He asked, bending over and gallantly kissing her hand. I'm afraid you fret too much. However, I must tell you, Miss Tyson, to be less strict with our favorite guest. Oh, I must tell Miss Tyson to be less strict with our favorite guest. Shall I call Luther and have him wheel you through the gardens? No, just leave me alone, Mrs. Eldridge sighed. Yes, that's what you need, rest and quiet, Dr. Bell agreed. But, he went on, we must talk business. Shall we get over that little matter of signing the transfer papers now? Your proposition is nothing short of robbery, and I will not consent, Mrs. Eldridge replied, sitting bolt upright. Dear me, how harsh you are, Dr. Bell said soothingly. When you came here, you had every confidence in me. You entered this place of your own accord. You didn't give your relatives any idea where you were going. Didn't you agree to that as part of your treatment? Fool that I was, yes, snapped Mrs. Eldridge. But you haven't kept your part of the bargain to me or to any of the other ladies. You promised a special secret treatment, so secret that you don't want anybody to know about it. That's why you have this isolated place. The special treatment to restore youthful vigor isn't ready yet, Dr. Bell replied, but it will be very expensive. I must have the extra money now. Oh, Nancy thought, he's undoubtedly a fraud. I demand that you let me go, Mrs. Eldridge cried out. We can't do that, Dr. Bell said. It would discredit our sanatorium to have a person leave in a poor state of health. Besides, I have your signed declaration that you are a patient here of your own accord, and that you agree to remain as long as I think necessary. Naturally, I forbid you to go. Mrs. Eldridge glanced quickly toward the woods where the girls were concealed. In a loud, clear voice, she said, You wish me to sign over to you many thousands of dollars, in addition to the $3,000 I have already paid you. And why not? Dr. Bell retorted irritably. There are other patients whom I have charged more. Well, I suppose that once the papers are signed, I won't live very long, the old lady said meaningfully. You will feel like a girl again, Dr. Bell replied. I'd rather live without youthful vigor and be out of here, Mrs. Eldridge said, closing her eyes. I won't sign a thing. If you should kill me, you won't get a cent, that's all. I wish you would go. I'm very tired. Nancy saw the doctor's face turn red. His beard seemed to bristle and his eyes blazed with rage. You'll sing a different tune if you don't do as I say, he fumed. I've wasted enough time on you. I'll give you until 9 o'clock tonight to come to your senses. Oh, you are a brute, Mrs. Eldridge cried. If only some good angel would come to my little room in that hot south corner on the 3rd floor and rescue me. Say, what are you talking about? Dr. Bell asked, looking about him suspiciously. You don't think any angels are listening to your careful directions, do you? The girls could not help grinning. Dr. Bell turned and shouted, Luther! A man in a white uniform came out of the gatehouse. Take Mrs. Eldridge to the porch, the doctor snapped. Any word about the new patient? A message arrived by Bird X that she will be here at 9, the attendant said with a wink as he wheeled Mrs. Eldridge away. Swiftly, the girls made their way toward the car. Nancy took the wheel and headed for the highway. As they drove along, the sun broke through the overcast. We're going to Glenville, she said. It's about 5 miles from here. George can see a doctor there. What about Mrs. Eldridge? Bess asked. No plan yet, Nancy said tersely, but I'm thinking. Her companions asked no more questions. When they reached the small town, Bess went with George while Nancy telephoned Ned from the drugstore. She told him what had happened and alerted him to his part in the plan she had devised. You can count on me, he said. An hour later, the girls met in a sandwich shop for a late lunch. My ankle isn't sprained, George reported. The doctor put on a bandage and it feels better. Good, said Nancy. Are you ready for danger? She asked soberly. Of course we are, George answered steadily. Anything to get those poor old ladies free and home to their families, Bess added. Then right after we eat, I'm going shopping while you two hire a black sedan. You may have to ride to another town for it, so let's meet here about 5. Then I'll tell you the plan. At the appointed time, Nancy came hurrying down the street, her arms filled with packages. A black sedan was parked at the curb behind her convertible, where Bess and George were waiting. What did you buy? George asked in amazement. Nancy grinned. Black Oxfords, a black hat with a heavy veil, gray gloves, and a long black coat, much too big for me. George's eyes grew wide. Nancy, you're going to dress up like an old lady? That's right. I'll be that new patient who's supposed to arrive at 9 o'clock. Only, I'll be there early. Bess stared at the parcels Nancy was holding. What's in that 5th bag? A nurse's uniform and a pair of horn-rimmed glasses for you, said Nancy. Bess gasped. Me? Yes, you'll have to drive the car into the sanatorium grounds, Nancy replied. Oh my goodness, was all Bess could say. Immediately, George offered to go instead, but Nancy said no. You can never tell what will happen, she said. With that bad ankle, you wouldn't be able to run if it should be necessary. Nancy put the packages in the convertible and suggested that they eat supper. They found a small restaurant on a side street and ordered hot sandwiches and milk. What's my part in the plan? George asked. I want you to stay with the convertible, in the clearing where we hid it before, Nancy said. Bess may need your help when she brings Mrs. Eldridge out. George nodded. I see. I'll play it cool. But what about you, Nancy? Asked Bess. You're not going to stay in that awful place. Yes, we must get Mrs. Eldridge out before 9 o'clock. After that, I'll give the signal for the rescue of the others. A pigeon will carry it to the deserted Tucker estate where Ned is stationed. Nancy glanced at her watch. There's no more time to talk now. We must get started. With George driving the convertible and Nancy the sedan, they returned to the clearing near Larkspur Lane. There, Bess changed into the nurse uniform and Nancy put her costume over her own clothes. Bess, wearing horn-rimmed glasses, looked stern in her white uniform and cap. Nancy seemed small and frail in the long black coat and heavily veiled hat. I'd never know you, George exclaimed. 10 minutes later, in the gathering dusk, the sedan reached the gatehouse. Now remember to give the password, Nancy whispered. Trembling, Bess halted the car in front of the gates as the gatekeeper appeared and chained his Great Dane securely. The huge dog strained at his leash and barked furiously. His master advanced towards the girls. Suppose the password has been changed, Nancy thought fearfully. What's the good word? Demanded the watchman hoarsely, stepping closer. Singing horses, Bess whispered, quaking. Okay, end of chapter 15. I don't know where the cat went. She was asleep? I thought she was dead. You've made that mistake before? Welcome for clapping. And yes, be safe, V. I guess you're driving home, so be safe on your drive. Oh, wow. So we have like a winter storm, hi Boo, advisory for this weekend. Hi, what are you doing? Meow. And apparently, all the counties in Oklahoma have already received a state of emergency designation. Winter storm, hi Boo. The storm is named Hi Boo. So, it's supposed to be bad, I guess. For Oklahoma, anyways. Oh yeah, Joni's in Oklahoma too, so you're under it too. Yeah? How much snow do they say you'll have up there? I can't remember. I don't know what the latest is here. Hi Boo, snow on you. Hi Boo Boo. Meow. What are you doing? Are you being good? Yeah. You a good kitty? Yeah. Every day. I'm not sure. Starts at 8. Get here. I guess we'll leave at 6:30. How long does it take to get there? Yeah, so we'll see how it ends up over the weekend. 48 inches and ice. Oh, hi Summer, thank you for the host. That's crazy. I don't know what they've said for ours, because I haven't looked recently, but that's a lot. But I think you're farther north anyways, so that I hate ice but love snow. Yeah. Yeah, so you're excited, aren't you? I'm excited. Because I like any kind of weather that's kind of out of the ordinary. Yeah, we'll be okay. Yeah, it'll be fine. It just means that we probably won't go anywhere. Which we had plans for Saturday night, but I don't know if that'll happen. And theoretically I have point class on Saturday, but I have a feeling that that will get canceled, which I'm okay with, because I don't really want to go, even though I've paid for it. And we have less classes in December anyways, so I don't know what will happen, but do you hate it because of Fox and Geese? Nice. Yep. That's why I hate it. Actually, I really like the story of Ice. I just don't like the puzzles in that game. Except for the food puzzle. But even that gets tedious. Boop. I don't suppose cats like it when you boop their news. Oh yeah, I hope we don't lose power. Good point. Although we have a fireplace, so I don't think it'd be too bad. Although we should probably get more candles. We just moved, well, over the summer. It's been a while now, but I'm not sure where our flashlights are. So oh snap, Terry did an ND. There I've met my ND references quota for the year. Nice. Okay, Boo, I gotta read. Your little lip is so cute. She sticks out her lip. You don't think you've ever lost power due to snow? Well, you probably have better infrastructure for it there in New York, but Oklahoma doesn't. I'm one of the few people that don't hate fox and geese. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, what am I saying? We probably don't have as good infrastructure for winter storms as you do in New York, and we're just not as used to it. So people don't know how to drive in snow here or ice, so it's just not feasible for people to like get out. So it's a bigger deal if it happens here, but obviously you guys are used to it, so but yeah, I think when there's an ice storm, it's more likely that we'll lose power, but not necessarily snow. But they are predicting ice for this too, so it's a possibility. Well, I look forward to failing next year. You'll not fail. You'll get to play even more Nancy Drew games next year, right? That should be your New Year's resolution, is playing more Nancy Drew games. Okay. Let's continue. A chapter, I'm not sure. Hopefully we'll be able to finish, but chapter 16, Sleuthing. Singing horses, repeated the guard. Right you are. Striding up to the gates, he opened them wide. Bess guided the car between the posts, and the portals clanged shut. The password had permitted them to enter. Both girls heaved sighs of relief as they sped up the gravel driveway. Halfway to the mansion, Nancy spoke. Stop! No one can see us from the house yet, and the lodge is concealed by those shrubs. Bess brought the car to a halt, and Nancy said, Back the car off the drive into that clump of trees, Bess. Good. Lucky there's enough room. Get in as far as you can. Keep on backing. Farther. That's fine. Now you wait here. I'll return as soon as I can. Don't be too long, said Bess, trying not to sound frightened. Nancy squeezed her friend's hand and slipped out of the car. As she went up the hill, she could hear the dog down at the gatehouse growling. I hope he's still chained, she thought. Near the mansion, Nancy assumed a stooped posture and an uncertain walk. I must be on my guard, she told herself. Light streamed out onto the lawn from the windows of the house. Staying in the shadows, Nancy reached the walls of the mansion and made her way around to the back, where she found an open door. Peering through the screen, she saw a wide, dimly lighted hallway with stairs ascending to her left, and guessed that this was a back door to the main corridor. She tested the screen. It was unlatched. Now for a trip inside, she murmured. I hope my new shoes don't squeak. Quietly, she stepped into the hall. Half a dozen wheelchairs stood about. 2 of them had sleeping occupants, but there was no other sign of life. Nancy moved on tiptoe toward the broad stairway, and had just reached broad stairway, and had just reached the steps when she heard the tread of feet on the oaken floor. In a flash, she darted to an empty wheelchair and muffled herself in the light woolen blanket left by its last occupant. What are you looking at, Boo? What? I'll try to look as if I'm asleep, she thought. At that moment, a young woman in a striped uniform entered the hall. Nancy watched her apprehensively, fearing that the hat and veil would excite some comment. The nurse's helper, however, marched by humming to herself, giving none of the chairs a second glance. As soon as she disappeared through a door, Nancy leaped up and dashed toward the stairs. A white head poked up from the nearest chair, and a cracked voice cried, Hi there, my dear. The doctor seems to have more than cured you. Why, you are young again. Nancy did not pause, but with hammering heart ran up the steps to the second floor. She quickly glanced around, then started the climb to the next story. At the top of the stairs, she peered cautiously down the corridor. Empty. Relieved, Nancy tried to get her bearings. The south corner room, Mrs. Eldridge had said. That would be to my right. Quickly, Nancy tiptoed down the hall and stopped before the last door. She bent to look through the keyhole, but could see nothing. Then she turned the knob. The door was locked. What a surprise! It's locked! We should do this for Nancy. As Nancy racked her brains to think of a way to open it, she heard footsteps on the stairs. She darted across the hall and tried the handle of the opposite door. It turned, and she stumbled into total darkness. It was not a room, but a small broom closet. It was a tight squeeze. Nancy did not dare move, for in the brief moment that the closet door was open, she had seen that the floor was filled with pails. Against the wall were mops, brooms, and other cleaning equipment. Her slightest movement would send them clattering to the floor. No, Boo, that's not something you can get on. You can't climb up the desk. Yeah. With her ear to the door, Nancy waited. The footsteps approached, coming her way. They stopped outside her hiding place. For an instant, she dared not breathe. Then there was the rattle of a key in a lock, and the clink of china on a tray. Nancy guessed that a bedtime snack was being brought to Mrs. Eldridge. Cautiously, she opened the door and saw a white skirt vanish into Mrs. Eldridge's room. Then came Miss Tyson's harsh voice. You're not getting on the desk. It's not an option for you, Boo. Yeah. Wake up, Mrs. Eldridge. Here's your medicine and some food. If you don't do as the doctor says, it will be the last snack you'll taste for a long time. The patient groaned faintly, and the nurse went on speaking. I have some nice hot consomme and toast and rice pudding. Doesn't that make your mouth water? Taste it and remember that tomorrow there will be only stale bread and warm water for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if you don't obey our dear good Dr. Bell, who is so kind to you. An idea suddenly occurred to Nancy. If that nurse is going to lecture Mrs. Eldridge, I'll have some time to act, she decided. Swiftly, Nancy tore a strip from her veil and slipped out of the closet to the opposite door. It stood slightly ajar. With the piece of net, Nancy plugged the slot in the door frame into which the bolt of the spring lock fitted. Then she darted back to her hiding place. I hope my scheme works, she thought. As Nancy stepped back and pulled the door shut, she bumped against a broom. The handle fell forward. Quickly, Nancy caught it and another broom which toppled. For a moment, she clutched the wooden handles in the dark, her heart pounding. Then, very cautiously, Nancy propped them against the wall again. Oh, that's all I need, she murmured. One noise and I'll be trapped. Miss Tyson remained to threaten Mrs. Eldridge a few minutes more, then left the room. She closed the door and, apparently thinking it was locked, hurried away. Nancy listened for her to go downstairs, then ran to the door across the hall. Her trick had worked. The bolt had failed to lock. Nancy pushed the door open and stepped into the room. Mrs. Eldridge, she said softly. The old lady was propped up in bed, with 2 pillows behind her back, contemplating her bedtime snack. With a sigh, she pushed aside the tray on her lap. Mrs. Eldridge, Nancy whispered again, coming closer to the elderly woman. The patient looked up and gave a sharp scream. Nancy flew to her side. Don't be afraid, it's Nancy Drew, the girl who spoke to you through the fence, she whispered, quickly lifting the veil. I'm sorry. I'm nervous, the old woman gasped. They've tried their best to frighten me so often. How in the world did you get in? Don't worry about that. The thing to do now is for you to get out of here. I hope no one heard you scream. But as she spoke, she heard someone running down the hall. I heard Mrs. Eldridge scream, came Miss Tyson's voice. What of it? Said a second speaker. I suppose I'll have to chase into her room again, the nurse said irritably. I wouldn't bother, came another voice. But I can't let anything happen to her, said the nurse. She hasn't signed yet? No. Nancy looked around the room. There was not even a clothes closet to hide in. Mrs. Eldridge groaned. Oh, child, what will you do? As the doorknob turned, Nancy dived under the bed. It was very dusty there, and she lay motionless, almost afraid to breathe. Nancy could see a pair of white, leather-shod feet stride into the room and pause at the foot of the bed, a few inches from her nose. You screamed. Miss Tyson said angrily. Why, Mrs. Eldridge? Oh, did I? The patient asked in a weak voice. I am sorry. Whether you're sorry or not makes no difference, Miss Tyson snapped. There are other patients in the house whom you upset by carrying on that way. Why did you scream? I'm really very sorry, Mrs. Eldridge said, trying to find some excuse for her outcry. It won't happen again. I asked you why, the nurse said sharply. There was no reply. Answer my question, exclaimed the nurse, stamping her foot and raising a cloud of dust. Nancy pressed the hat veil to her face, trying not to sneeze. The consomme's very hot, Mrs. Eldridge said. I burned my tongue. A likely story, the nurse sniffed. The broth is not as hot as all that, after being carried up from the kitchen. No, that is not the truth, Mrs. Eldridge, and I intend to find out your real reason. Oh, Miss Tyson, begged the patient, don't scold me. I had to make a special trip up here on your account. That's too bad. I'm sorry. Well, why did you scream? What have you been doing? Rasped the nurse. Nothing, replied the old lady. I haven't been out of bed. You've been acting funny ever since this afternoon. You're up to something. Then the nurse added in a bullying tone. You know what I'm going to do? What? Asked Miss Eldridge. Search this room. Okay. Maybe my resolution will be to beat Kerr. That should happen before next year. You mean as a Christmas present, Docs? Christmas special, Docs, or present special, whatever. Yeah, she would love that. Don't I know it? When I try to look as if I'm asleep, I just wind up being asleep. The cold enveloping me is making me sleepy. Aw, CJ. You need some sweaters and blankies and hot chocolate. Are things ever locked in Indy? Ever? Nancy's stripping yet again. I was wearing my It's Locked hoodie from her, and someone came up to me and asked what's locked. I was like, everything in the Nancy Drew world. Oh my gosh. They obviously didn't know what your hoodie was. And that's cool that you have it. That's actually one that I want. I put it on my Amazon wish list. Thank you for clapping. Nancy needs to grab that lady by the ankles and pull her to the floor. I think you're right. There needs to be just a brawl. Okay. Here comes the kitty. Meow. Meow. Yeah, I want to nap, but I don't, but I do. Aww. Do we need a koala emote in this, or not? Command. I need some different type of nap command in my stream, I guess. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to bonk you on the face. Okay, we shall continue. Chapter 17. Attic Hideout. At the nurse's words, Nancy froze in horror. From her hiding place under the bed, she strained to hear the old woman's reply. Well, go ahead and search, quavered Mrs. Eldridge. What do I care? You spunky old dear, Nancy thought. The nurse snorted. I guess it would be a waste of time. Things are beginning to get on my nerves. You especially. I'm sorry, Mrs. Eldridge said meekly. I think you screamed just to make trouble, snapped the nurse, because you know another patient is due here, and you want to give the place a bad reputation. Well, spare yourself the trouble. The new patient's nurse just telephoned that she will not arrive today. Nancy nearly groaned. If someone questions the gatekeeper, I'm sunk, she thought. I must get Mrs. Eldridge out of here quickly. I don't even understand, but thank you, Terry. I mean, it's not, like, real cool to come in here without saying hi first, so, you know, if you wanted to, you could just say hi and be a decent person, but... Okay, back to the story. I'll give you 5 minutes to eat, then it'll be 9 o'clock. 0 hour for you, old girl. With an ugly laugh, the nurse stamped out of the room. Nancy waited until the sound of her footsteps had died away before she crept from her hiding place. Hastily, she brushed the dust from her black clothing. You were wonderful, Mrs. Eldridge, she whispered. Oh, also, thank you for the bits, Joni. I don't know why I just, totally went out of the way on that, but thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully the cup looked good where it is, because it's precariously sitting on the table back there by the nutcracker. Okay, now we must work fast and quietly. Can you walk? Yes, they keep us confined to wheelchairs to weaken us, but I'm still pretty spry. I walk up and down this room for a little exercise. Once I tried to climb out of a ground floor window, but the vines pulled loose and I fell and dislocated my shoulder. Is that how it happened? Nancy marveled at the elderly woman's courage. I don't get it either, CJ. I mean, I know the last word, obviously, but I don't understand what it said in the middle. Anyways, doesn't matter. While Mrs. Eldridge talked, Nancy had taken off her long coat, hat, and gloves. Now she helped the woman to put on her own shoes and Nancy's costume. As she did so, the excited old lady, do you want up here? Okay. Hold on, I'm gonna pick Boo up. Come here. Come here.
Yeah?
Okay, say hi. Hi, Boo-Boo. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, they missed an important letter. Well, that was their fault. I love it when trolls are, dumb, too. Hello again, kitty. Everybody says hi. Okay, I think... Oh, her paws are cold. She is trying to, Here, I'm trying to give you most of my lap. Hold on. Yeah, this is difficult because you're bigger than my lap is. Okay. Now she helped the woman to put on her own shoes and Nancy's costume. As she did so, the excited old lady looked at the supper tray. Food is cooked with drugs to keep us drowsy all the time, she said. I eat as little of it as possible. How dreadful, Nancy murmured as she helped her to the door. Don't take the main stairs, Mrs. Eldridge whispered. There's a service flat at the rear end of the hall. Are you sure? Nancy asked. Yes. I explored this place in the dark until they took to locking me in at night. By the way, how could you open my door? I'll tell you later, said Nancy. Come on. The service stairway was a steep flight of enclosed steps which Mrs. Eldridge had to go down sideways, one at a time. With maddening slowness, they reached the second floor and saw lights reflected under the door leading to the hall. The stairs squeaked and Nancy's nerves grew tenser. Near the ground floor, the staircase divided, and Mrs. Eldridge said they should take the left branch. The other leads into the kitchen. This one takes you to the cellar landing and the entrance into the garden, she whispered. A few minutes later, they stepped into the open air. As fast as Mrs. Eldridge could go, the two hastened to the car. Nancy's heart leaped with joy when she saw its hulking shadow among the trees. Bess, she whispered, any trouble? No, but I thought you'd never come. Bess choked back tears of relief as she and Nancy helped Mrs. Eldridge into the back of the car. You'll have to sit on the floor and keep your head down, Nancy warned Mrs. Eldridge. Go now, Bess. Good luck. Here's a picture. It says, from her hiding place, Nancy strained to hear Mrs. Eldridge's reply. That's pretty much how I pictured it. Look at Nancy under the bed. Hey, Boo. What are you doing? Oh, Nancy, aren't you coming? Bess whispered. No, I have work to do here. Well, for goodness sake, be careful. The car moved out of the shadows to the driveway. Nancy followed and watched the red taillights proceed toward the closed gate. Oh, I hope there'll be no trouble, she thought. The watchman came out with a flashlight and shone it into Bess's window as she stopped. The dog began to bark frantically. For what seemed an age, the gatekeeper held the light in Bess's face, and Nancy heard him talking, but could not make out the words. What was the trouble? At last he shrugged, opened the gate, and the car shot through. As the red taillights disappeared down the lane, Nancy gave a sigh of relief. Now to send Ned the alarm. As she turned back toward the house, Nancy saw that it was ablaze with lights. Figures darted back and forth across the illumined windows. Reaching the mansion, Nancy concealed herself in the shrubbery along the foundation. A window above her was suddenly flung open and Belle's voice rang out. Emily, your carelessness is inexcusable, he thundered. I am not afraid of the old crone's escaping, but she will give us a pretty hour's work searching the grounds. Listen, Simon, Miss Tyson replied. I can't be everywhere at once. You can keep your eyes open, he snapped. Mrs. Eldridge smuggled her bracelet to that doctor right under your nose. Forget it, the woman retorted. You've taken in enough money on these old women. Why don't you quit this business? Then we could all leave for South America, as you promised. Not with several $1,000s still to be had, Belle snarled. See that every shrub and bush in this place is combed for Mrs. Eldridge, and when you find her, bring her to me. All right. We will wring the money out of her tonight. Nancy peered upward. She could see Belle's pointed beard thrust from the window. Suppose he saw her, but after a few moments he withdrew his head. So they are searching the grounds, Nancy mused. In that case, Mrs. Eldridge's room would be the safest place for me. The Great Dane growled menacingly at the gatehouse. Nancy shivered. Suppose they let him loose. That's okay, he'd just lick you to death. She edged softly to the rear door by which she and the elderly woman had left, and crept up the steep, dark stairs. When she was halfway to the third story, the door below her was thrown open, and a voice asked, Has anyone looked in here? As light streamed into the stairway, Nancy ran on tiptoe to the top. I'll check the third floor, the same woman said. As she started upward, Nancy whirled and quietly sprinted up the narrow stairs, 2 steps and 1 leap. At the top was a low door. The young detective opened it, stepped into blackness, and closed the door softly behind her. From the mustiness, she surmised that it was an attic. For a few moments she listened. Silence. Then came a scurrying noise and a squeak. Mice! Nancy felt along the wall until her fingers found a switch. She flicked it on, and a single bulb lighted in the middle of a great raftered room. Here and there stood trunks, barrels, and old furniture. Against one wall rested dozens of dismantled bedsteads. In the middle, a ladder led up to rafters, and there Nancy could see a partial floor with boxes and piles of newspapers. Suddenly, she noticed a small, round window at one end of the attic. With a gasp, Nancy quickly flicked off the light, hoping no one had seen it from the grounds. Yeah, I thought that was kind of stupid of her. She felt her way to the window and looked down. Several flashlights were moving near the outbuildings. That's where I'll have to go, she said to herself. Well, thank you, husband, for your subscription through Twitch Prime. I don't know what to say. Thanks. Thanks, dear. Okay, that's where I'll have to go, she said to herself, in order to send the alarm to Ned. I must reach the pigeon loft unseen. Just then, she heard a low sigh behind her in the dark attic. It seemed to come from above. Who could be hiding here? Or maybe it's a prisoner. Morgan, she thought. So this is where they're keeping him. Nancy felt her way back to the ladder and cautiously climbed partway up. Morgan? She whispered. There was a gasp. Yes? Who is it? Nancy Drew. Are you well enough to move? No, was the faint reply. I'm weak. Nancy's heart sank. Never mind, she said encouragingly. I'm going to get you out of here somehow. Just... At that moment, footsteps clumped on the attic stairs. That was not the word I was expecting. Nancy scampered up the ladder and felt among the boxes and papers. Just as she crouched down, the light went on. From a cramped position, she saw that Morgan, very pale, lay on a mattress well concealed amid the boxes. Scattered at her feet were bits of torn newspaper. Peering between boxes, she saw two men at the door. One had a thin, pinched face, the other was stout with pale, flabby features. The big man was puffing. "There's nobody here, Tar. All those stairs for nothing." "Chief said he saw a light." "Chief's wrong." The other man sighed. "We'd better search anyway." Very cautiously, Nancy tried to relieve her cramped muscles, but just as they walked beneath the platform, her foot slipped, pushing a small piece of paper off the platform. As it fluttered down, the two men looked up. "Morgan?" Tara called sharply. "You alone?" The sick man groaned slightly. "Forget it," said Jackson. "There's nobody with him. Probably a mouse disturbed the paper. The place is full of them." Welcome for cheering. Thank you for the rainbow bits in my cup. Hold on, I'll get to you in a second. We ought to search, the thin man said weakly. The heavy one grinned craftily. "Let's not and say we did." The other gave a weak laugh and they left. Ah! Thank you for the bits, Freddy. Oh my goodness. We're getting lots of bits. There's a bit train. Thank you for the bits. Why do that? Hold on, I'm almost done with the chapter, people. I'll be back soon, Morgan, Nancy promised. As quickly as possible, she made her way out of the attic, down to the 3rd floor. I'll wait in Mrs. Eldridge's room, Nancy decided. When I hear the searchers come inside, I'll sneak out to the pigeon loft. Softly, she turned the knob and stepped into the upper hall. A startled scream rang out. Oh! Oh, help! A crash of crockery froze Nancy in her tracks. The nurse's helper was in the hallway, staring at Nancy. Hold on! Staring at Nancy open-mouthed, a tray of broken dishes at her feet. Nancy darted past her and ran down the main stairs, while behind her she heard the girls shouting the alarm. A chorus of excited voices came from the 2nd floor, but Nancy reached the veranda without being seen. She ran along its entire length and jumped into the shrubbery, panting. Then, hoping that she would not be seen, Nancy darted across the open lawn to a clump of bushes. A moment later, her heart leaped with alarm. Somewhere nearby, she heard the dog sniffing. The next instant, the animal broke into frantic barking. Heavy footsteps raced up, and a blinding light focused on Nancy's face. "Here she is," a deep voice shouted. "I got her, Chief." Okay, end of chapter. Are you leaving me, Boo? She left. Okay, because I stopped touching her. Chapter 17. Yes. We are almost done with the book. It's very exciting, very exciting. Thank you, everyone, for the bits, including my husband. And the sub. I still don't get it. CJ, will you, message me or somebody message me telling me what it was? Because I don't get it. You said he's missing a letter? The letter's really throwing me off because I don't get it. Returns with butternut squash pizza. Well, I hope you enjoy that. I was just telling my friends at lunch how I can't do squash because the first time I tried it, I threw up. So I don't eat squash. So personally, that doesn't sound very exciting, but I hope you enjoy it. And thank you again for the bits, Joni. I appreciate it. Well, I still don't get it, CJ, so...
I'm home and also
Hi, V! I'm glad you're home safe. Thank you for the sub. Oh my goodness. I'm assuming that's a resub. I haven't gotten to the text yet, but thank you so much. There's a monster under my bed. Give her a good scare. Steve is everywhere. You could say some of the things you were saying earlier. What? I came for the hedgies. Not for me, just for the hedgies. Pretty. I see a Keegan. I love the little heads in the jar. What a number 2 kind of move from me. What? Keegan trolling hardcore. Thank you for clapping. Do you think Chief is his real name? I'm pretty sure it's capitalized, so possibly. It's not worth it. You pretty much got it. Okay. It was an S on the first word. That still doesn't make sense. An S on the first word? Thank you for the 3 bits. CJ is always worth it. That's true. Heartless has a heart after all. Yes, I come get you soon, but I'm trying to finish the book. I think I have like 1 or 2 more chapters. Subscribe for 9 months in a row. Oh my gosh, V has a Twitch baby with me. That came out wrong, but we'll go with it. So, thank you for the sub, V. That's so sweet. You've been my most loyal sub, as in the only one who's repeatedly subbed. Not even my husband has repeatedly subscribed to me. So, I just want you to know that you're very special to me. And that is why we have a Twitch baby. Hedgies! Twitch beeb! Ready? Nods. Thank you for the more bits, whatever they're called. What will you name it? Ooh, that's a good question. Shall we call it Kayla? Okay, I mean, sure. What else do we call it? Yes, and you aren't even on my poison list, even though I'm pretty sure Steve is your fault. What? Steve is Steve's fault. I was talking about the things you were saying when you're talking to a husband in the other room. Oh, okay. You punk. Are we competing for... No, they missed the jar. You not sorry, V. Lol. True. Oh my goodness, you guys. Oh, if we get snowed in on Saturday, maybe I can do another read stream, and I'll do the Nutcracker. That would be really fun. If nobody else is streaming on Saturday, which I don't know what's going on Saturday, but okay, I'm competing for your love. Yep. You now have to compete with the cat for my love. No, really, it's the cat. I'm competing with the cat for your love. That's what's gonna happen now. Oh, you guys, now that we have a cat, we can get stuff for Keegan that says, like, #1 cat dad and stuff. I was just ahead of you a bit. Okay, anyways, let's continue because I have to go pick up Keegan soon. Be right back, work. And we have 2 more chapters to go, I think. So, we're gonna go straight through it. So, chapter 18, The Underground Cell. Here, let me take a drink. More running steps came closer and stopped outside the bushes. "Come out of there," ordered a harsh voice. Nancy's heart sank. The speaker was Adam Thorne. Knowing resistance was futile, she crept from the brush and stood up in the glare of a powerful flashlight. In the darkness just beyond, Nancy could hear the dog snarling and her captors breathing heavily. "It isn't the old lady," came Miss Tyson's voice. "It's Nancy Drew." Adam Thorne growled. "What? I thought we'd knocked her out of action." Miss Tyson said in a worried voice, "That's what Taryn Jackson reported. Tar himself pushed her." "Quiet," snapped Thorne. "She's tricked us. Take her to the house. We'll lock her up." Quick as lightning, Nancy plunged out of the light and desperately raced down the hill. Taken by surprise, her captors hesitated, then pounded after her, the dog barking furiously. Blinded by the sudden change from light to darkness, Nancy stumbled and fell. An instant later, the Great Dane leaped on her. "Grab that leash!" shouted Thorne. The dog was yanked back, then someone jerked Nancy to her feet. "We'll take her to the house," panted Thorne. With the ex-lawyer in the lead, flanked by the nurse and the attendant, and guarded in the rear by the gatekeeper and his dog, Nancy was marched to the mansion. Bell was waiting in the main hall. "Who is this?" he demanded. "Where's Mrs. Eldridge?" "We haven't found the old fox yet," Thorne answered. "This is the Drew girl I warned you about." Bell's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean by trespassing on private property?" "I meant no harm," Nancy replied truthfully. Thorne snorted scornfully. "She's been spying. It's your fault, Bell. I told you not to bring Dr. Spire here." "Hi, Boo." "Hi. Did you go pee?" "Sounded like you used the litter again. And you're trailing it in here." "Yeah." I told you not to bring Dr. Spire here. If the old woman's shoulder was dislocated, you should have let it stay that way. Too bad you aren't a real doctor," he added unpleasantly. "You could have said it yourself." "Never mind that," Miss Tyson put in sharply. "How did she get in here?" "Luther, bring the gatekeeper quickly," Bell ordered. "Just how did you get in, Miss Drew?" "I came in at the entrance," Nancy replied. "The larkspur is beautiful." "I'm not interested in flowers. I think—" Bell checked himself. He turned to Adam Thorne and spoke in an undertone, but Nancy, straining her ears, heard him say, "Password to Larkspur Lane," before their voices became hushed. After a few minutes, the attendant appeared with the gateman. "Jones, have you ever seen this young woman?" Bell demanded, glaring at the man standing before him. "No, sir," the guard declared, not recognizing Nancy dressed in her own clothes. "Did anybody come in by the gate tonight?" Bell asked sharply. Nancy saw fear flicker in the man's eyes as he met Bell's hard stare. Through no fault of his own, the gateman had let intruders into the grounds. Jones swallowed. No, Chief," he said. "Nobody came in or out." A wave of relief swept over Nancy. No alarm would go out for Mrs. Eldridge. The gang would continue to think she was hiding on the grounds. "All right," Bell said. "Get back to the gate." Then, turning to Thorne, he said, "Let's continue this in my office." Miss Tyson grinned maliciously as she prodded Nancy along and into a large, luxurious room. A thick green carpet covered the floor, and in the center stood a large mahogany desk. The walls, paneled in a rich-looking wood, were hung with costly oil paintings. "Shut the door, Luther," Bell ordered. Bell seated himself behind the desk, motioning Nancy to stand opposite him. There was tense silence for a moment. Then Bell reached out for a desk telephone. "I'm going to call the police, Miss Drew, and turn you over to them on a charge of trespassing, breaking, and entering with attempt to steal." "I wish you would," Nancy replied, "if it is possible over that dummy telephone." "Didn't I tell you she was sharp-eyed?" Thorne scolded. "You can't fool her. Follow my advice and put her away. This is a waste of time." "What do you mean? Do you wish to have me summon the police?" Bell blustered. "Why do you call this a dummy telephone?" "Because, in answer to your first question, I should be happy to be escorted from here under police protection," Nancy retorted. "I know the telephone is a dummy because there are no—" She checked herself abruptly. "No use proving her powers of observation." "See here, Nancy Drew," Bell said, pointing a finger at her. "Stop all this talk and tell me how you entered these grounds, and why. I know all about you. Sylvan Lake is a long distance from here, and you did not walk." "There are various ways of traveling." "Belle, I'm telling you, it's just foolishness to try to match wits with this girl," Thorne put in. "I know a way to make her talk, and what's more, I'm sure her illustrious father will pay plenty to get his precious daughter back." "An excellent idea, Thorne," Belle said with an evil smile. "What would you suggest we do first?" Put her in the cistern, said Thorn. I guess a couple of days without food or drink, down in the dark and cold. Excuse me, what are you doing? Hey, get down from there. Boo-boo. Do you see this? Do you see this, you guys? Boo. Yeah, get down. You don't need to be up there. Doofus. Nope. Not a place for kitties. Not a place for kitties. Kitty escape. Okay, back to our regular programming. I guess a couple of days without food or drink down in the dark and cold with the rats and spiders will make Miss Drew answer any question we ask. Miss Tyson laughed harshly, looking straight at Nancy to see if she winced at the prospect. That will take some of the snap out of her, she said. A shiver went down Nancy's spine, but she did not change expression. Belle's cold eyes studied her carefully. You've caused us a lot of trouble, he said softly. Because of you, we had to give up our other headquarters. My partner, Mr. Tucker, will not overlook that very readily. Belle toyed with a sharp-pointed letter opener on his desk. Miss Tyson spoke up. The pigeon keeper guessed she had found that bird, kept it, and then followed it to Tucker's. Now I'm sure she was right. He was right. Only from the message that pigeon carried could she have learned the password. And I still say she couldn't have entered without it. Luther cleared his throat. But Jones said he was lying, Miss Tyson broke in. Where's the car you came in? She asked Nancy. Nancy thought it best to keep stalling. The farther away Bess, George, and Mrs. Eldridge got, the safer they would be. Nancy smiled. Why don't you search the grounds for the car? That's enough, snapped Belle. Take her away. Nancy knew she was in a hopeless predicament and reasoned that more was to be gained by strategy than by a desperate attempt to break loose. As she was marched out of the room, she heard Belle say, The disappearance of the Eldridge woman and the Drew girl showing up have me so upset I can't think. I'm going upstairs and tell Adolph. Let him handle this. It's dynamite. Do as you please, Thorne said coldly. Nancy, her arms pinned behind her back, was shoved out onto the porch and toward the buildings beyond the house. Just outside the pigeon loft, Thorne stooped and jerked at an iron ring in the ground. It was attached to a round steel lid about 3 feet in diameter. Beneath it gaped a black hole. Well, down you go, Nancy Drew, Thorne laughed. Nancy looked around desperately. There was no escape. As the nurse pushed her, the trapped girl was forced to start down a swaying, flimsy wooden ladder into the dark, damp hole. Down, 10 or 12 feet Nancy went, until she could feel the slimy bottom under her feet. This is worse than I bargained for, she thought ruefully. The ladder was jerked up, and Thorne called, Don't worry, you may have it back. There was a series of splitting noises, and pieces of the ladder came raining down around Nancy's head. As she threw up her arms to protect herself, she heard Thorne laugh sardonically. Then the lid clanged shut. Okay, this is the most evil we've gotten in the series, and we're 10 books in. That's pretty evil. Okay, chapter 19. Caught. Despair filled Nancy's heart, and she shivered. The dampness of the old cistern covered her like a clammy hand. She took a deep breath. Come on now, Nancy scolded herself. Brace up and try to find a way out. Stretching her arms wide, Nancy could feel nothing, so she knew her prison was wider than its 3-foot lid. When her eyes became accustomed to the darkness, she noticed tiny gleams of light coming from above. Perhaps the lid did not fit tightly. Or maybe it's a phosphorescent glow from some decaying thing, Nancy thought with distaste. Whatever it is, I must find out. Balancing herself with outstretched arms, she walked cautiously across the slippery floor. It was uneven, and Nancy stepped ankle-deep in cold water. A moment later, her fingers brushed the moist stone wall. She stared upward and saw light coming through chinks in the wall directly above her. I must try to reach those openings, but how? Then Nancy remembered the pieces of ladder Thorne had mockingly thrown to her. Maybe I can use them after all, she thought. Repressing a shudder, Nancy slid her fingers over the slimy floor for the fragments. Now's no time to be squeamish. Finding a piece of wood, Nancy fingered it anxiously for a nail. Feeling one, she pulled it loose from the rotten wood and noted that it was long and strong. Maybe this will work and maybe it won't, she said half aloud. To her horror, she was answered by a throaty chuckle. Nancy gasped. As the sound was repeated, she dropped the nail, unnerved. Then, fighting for control, the desperate girl located the noise. It was coming from above. Was someone watching through the chinks? Kel-lick-oo-oo-oo. As the new noise blended with the chuckles, Nancy suddenly grinned in relief. Pigeons! The light must be coming from the loft. Frantically, she sought the lost nail. Locating it, Nancy began to dig vigorously at the loose mortar. Soon she had hollowed out space enough to give herself one toehold. A little farther above, Nancy dug again and repeated the process until she could reach no higher on the wall. Then she climbed up and chipped out another hold. The mortar was hard, and her fingers, clutching the nail, grew cramped. The higher she went, the more difficult the task became. Finally, the imprisoned girl was forced to cling to the damp wall, her toes and the fingers of one hand digging into the niches she had scooped out. With her free hand, she scraped a higher grip for herself. At last, Nancy's fingers found the openings through which the light filtered. A big stone rocked under her hand. Mingled excitement and alarm shot through her. Here was the way out. But suppose I can't move the stone or I fall, she thought. About 8 feet below was the stone floor of the cistern. Nevertheless, Nancy forced herself to try pushing the stone aside. She failed, but suddenly it came loose and fell inward over her head. As the stone plummeted down, it grazed her shoulder, but Nancy managed to grab the top edge of the hole and hold tight. With a sigh of relief, she pulled herself through the enlarged opening and up to freedom. On the earthen floor of the pigeon loft, the young sleuth fell back exhausted and closed her eyes. A few moments later, she opened them to the sound of fluttering wings and sleepy cooing. The loft was lighted by a large, bright bulb under a small cage containing a pigeon. This is a sick bird, Nancy conjectured, and it is being kept warm. Capsules for messages lay on a shelf. Good, Nancy thought. She took a pencil and small pad from her blouse pocket and wrote 3 identical messages. SP at once. Nancy inserted them in the capsules, then caught a pigeon and attached the capsule to its anklet. Quickly she caught another bird, then a third. I'd better turn out the light for a few minutes so I won't be seen releasing these pigeons, she decided, and unscrewed the bulb. Nancy now felt her way to the door, opened it, and released the birds. Fly straight to Ned, she muttered. He's waiting at the Tucker estate. Hoping no one had seen the light go off, Nancy turned the bulb on again and fled from the coop to the carriage house garage. Here she considered her next move. Nancy knew there must be lights on the landing field because the gang used their plane at night. But how did they turn them on? Perhaps at a switch box in here? She opened the door wide enough to squeeze through and saw 2 large sedans. One was the old car used to kidnap Dr. Spire. Walking past it, Nancy glanced inside and stopped short. She had glimpsed a white blur. Was it a face she saw? Nancy turned quietly and stepped nearer. As she stared, a figure in one corner of the back seat moved. Someone was seated there, bound and gagged. Quickly, Nancy opened the car door. Removing the gag, she asked, "Morgan, how did you get here?" "They brought me down," he said hoarsely. "Thorne's going to finish me off to keep me from talking. But they'll do it where no one will find me." He breathed heavily. "The gang's ready to escape. Tucker has given the signal to clear out." "How soon?" asked Nancy as she quickly worked at his bonds. "I don't know," he whispered. "Soon." "What about the patients?" "They'll herd 'em into the cellar." Anger gave the weakened man strength to continue. "The gang isn't worried about them. They figure the shock will kill some of the old ladies, and the rest will be too confused and terrified to be much help to the police." "Those men are brutes!" Nancy exclaimed. "They mustn't get away." Quickly, she climbed from the car and took the nail from her pocket. Nancy inserted it into a tire valve, holding it open until all the air had hissed out. She did the same to the rest of the tires on both cars, then hurried back to Morgan. "Do you know how they turn on the landing field lights?" she asked. "Big oak," he said weakly, "at the edge of the field. Switch box nailed to the tree." "I must turn them on," she said. "I'll be back." Nancy dashed from the carriage house and ran down the hill toward the level field at the bottom. The moon was coming up, and the sloping lawn was bathed in pale light. If only they don't see me. From somewhere behind Nancy came the deep-throated bark of the Great Dane. Was he loose on the grounds? She wondered. At one end of the landing field, Nancy could see the plane, and at the other a clump of trees. She angled left and pounded down toward them. Reaching the shadow of the trees, she stopped and tried to spot the oak. Again, she heard the dogs bark, this time closer. Nancy looked back. The huge beast was silhouetted on the brow of the hill, straining against a leash held by the gatekeeper. He began pulling the man down the slope. Does he scent me? Nancy tried not to think about it, and pressed deeper into the clump of trees. There was the oak, and gleaming in the moonlight, a metal box nailed to the trunk. Nancy darted to it, opened the door, and pulled the single switch inside. Out on the field, spots of light were coming up through the short grass. Clever, she thought. They're sunk in the earth and aren't noticeable in daylight. Now for the plane. The far side of the landing area was bordered by woodland. Nancy ran from her shelter to the woods, then hastened along the edge of the field, keeping within the tree line. At the far end, she crouched low, dashed across the clearing, and crept under the low wing of the small plane. Nancy knew that the fuel drains were on the underside of the wings. She felt along the surface until her fingers encountered a T-shaped metal valve. This must be it, she decided, and pressed upward. A stream of fuel flowed to the ground. Nancy found that by turning the valve slightly, she could lock it open. Then she hurried to the other wing and did the same thing. Now, Nancy said to herself, that should ground the gang. I'll get back to Morgan and hide him before the men go to the cars. As she started to move, however, Nancy heard the Great Dane growling. Coming down the field were the dog and the gatekeeper, with 4 men running behind them. Nancy recognized Thorn, Belle, and Luther. But the 4th was a tall stranger. As they drew nearer, she saw he had a gaunt, cruel face and guessed he was Adolf Tucker. I'm telling you, I didn't turn on the lights, came Luther's voice. Well, somebody did, Thorn growled. Jones, can't you shut that dog up? There's a prowler down here, replied the gateman. That's what's the matter with him. As the party reached the plane, they stopped less than 30 feet from Nancy. The dog strained toward her hiding place, whining. Nancy took a deep breath. I'm really in a tight spot, she thought. If she moved from the shadow of the plane's wing, the men would see her. If she didn't, the dog would attack her. This is really giving a bad rap to Great Danes. Great Danes are not cruel dogs. Suddenly, shouts came from the hillside, and Nancy saw the bobbing rays of flashlights. Wait for me, called Miss Tyson. Something's gone wrong, her shrill voice warned. The tall man said sharply, Jones, take that dog and find out what the trouble is. We'll search down here for the prowler. As the gatekeeper pulled the dog away, louder shouts came from the hillside, and the 4 men looked up toward the moving lights. It's now or never, Nancy thought. Crouching low, she ran out on the moonlit field. Okay, one more chapter. I'm going to keep barreling through it because I really need to go, but I want to finish. The SP. Not daring to look back, Nancy raced for the shelter of the woods, wondering if she could make it before being detected. Suddenly, she heard a hoarse shout. Look, Chief, there goes a girl. The young sleuth's heart sank. Catch her, Thorn yelled. No, you fool, barked Belle. We haven't time. Into the plane, everybody. Go ahead, Adolf. Wait, came the tall man's hard voice. I smell gasoline. Thorn gave an angry exclamation, and Belle said, I do too. Where's it coming from? There's probably a leak in one of the fuel tanks, said Luther. Quickly, he ducked under the wing. One drain valve is open, he shouted. Open? Thundered Belle. Who did that? At once, Thorn climbed into the plane. In a moment, he gave an angry yell. We have no fuel, he cried, and jumped out. You're lagging. Okay, well, I'm not having any issues on my stream, so I'm assuming it's your Wi-Fi. Not entirely sure, but is anybody else having any issues? The gauges read empty. Miss Tyson raced up to them with 3 men and a girl at her heels, followed by the gatekeeper and his barking dog. Everything's gone wrong, she exclaimed. I'm okay. At that moment, a plane swooped soundlessly out of the sky. Before it taxied to a full stop, several armed state police officers jumped out and surrounded the criminals, SP, state police. A powerful searchlight was turned on the confused gang. A voice over a loudspeaker ordered, "Stand where you are, no one move." "Ned!" Nancy cried out. She raced. "Hello? Hello, Everin. Is that right?" There are lots of hearts. Yeah, you know what I mean. Okay, give me a second. I'm almost done. She raced from the woods and reached the plane as he leaped from it, followed by Dave, her father, and the pilot. "Dad!" Nancy exclaimed as Carson Drew caught her up in his arms. "Are you hurt?" he asked quickly. "No, Dad, but I'm so glad to see you. Ned, you're just wonderful." "Oh, Nancy, you take such chances," he said, "but I was sure happy I could come to the rescue." In a moment, a second noiseless plane skimmed down onto the field. Out jumped Bert, Lieutenant Mulligan, and 2 members of his detective squad. They joined the others in the circle of light, where the officers began snapping handcuffs on the prisoners. "Miss Drew," Lieutenant Mulligan said, "Ned Nickerson informed me of your plan, and I called the state police." "I'm glad the mystery is solved, Lieutenant," said Nancy, then turned to Thorne. "Where are the old ladies?" she asked anxiously. The gang members had been staring at Nancy in disbelief. "You!" Thorne sputtered. "How did you get out of the cistern?" "First answer my question," said Nancy. "They're in the cellar," Belle replied shortly. Miss Tyson spoke up. "They are not in the cellar." As Belle looked at her, puzzled, she added, "I didn't have time to put them there. As soon as I saw the air was out of our car tires, I knew something had gone wrong with the plans. I wanted to get away, fast." "What did you do with Morgan?" Nancy asked quickly. "Nothing. He's still in the car." Nancy explained Morgan's condition to the police, who promised the houseman would be taken to a hospital. Thorne glared at Nancy. "How did you get out of the cistern?" "Climbed out," Nancy said directly. "I used the ladder you gave me." "Sass!" Miss Tyson gasped. "That's impossible!" Briefly, Nancy told how she had escaped and sent for help. "SP at once," Ned said with a grin. "Sailplane at once." "What?" "Sailplane. Also send police," Nancy added. "Or state police, that's what... okay, whatever." "These aren't gliders?" Tucker asked. "No," Ned answered. "They're motorized sailplanes. They were perfect for this job because we flew them here using the motor, then cut it out and landed soundlessly." He grinned at Dave. "All we had to do was find 2 sailplanes. We finally rented these from an airport in the next county. The state police provided the pilots." "Dad," said Nancy, "how did you hear about the plan?" "Ned briefed me. He called our house on the chance that I'd return from Chicago." Looking at Adam Thorne, Mr. Drew added, "I'm proud of my daughter, Thorne. She planned to take you and your accomplices by surprise, so you couldn't harm the old ladies before you bolted." Lieutenant Mulligan cleared his throat. "Miss Drew, you're a fine detective." Nancy smiled and thanked him. Adolph Tucker turned to Belle and said angrily, "This is the girl you said would be no trouble?" "I warned Belle about her," Thorne spoke up, "but he wouldn't listen." "It's not my fault," said Belle, his voice rising nervously. "It's Thorne's. Ever since he read about the Corning's jeweled crystal collection, he wanted to steal it. Then he dragged us into the scheme and bungled it. My men were doing all his work. Whenever I wanted Tar and Jackson, they were trailing Nancy Drew in the sedan or spying on that Sylvan Lake place. They even set the dog on her. Twice they snatched Morgan, and Jackson showed the blue fire night after night to scare him. It finally worked. Then suddenly, Morgan wouldn't go along with us, so we had to teach him a lesson." "As for Tar," Belle went on bitterly, "he spent days making the firework wheel and rigging up an asbestos-lined box for it." Tar gave a sickly grin. "All I had to do was shut the door of the box and the blue fire was gone. Like magic." Jackson's face was pale. "We only did what Thorne ordered." "Be quiet, all of you," barked Thorne. "Don't you know there are police listening?" "At least one of them has sense." "It doesn't matter," Adolph Tucker said wearily. "They'll find all the evidence they need here." "Is this your whole gang?" Mulligan asked sharply. Tucker looked around the group, which included the gate man with the dog, the pigeon keeper, and the nurse's aide whom Nancy had startled in the hall. "Yes." Miss Tyson's assistant was shaking with fright. I was only doing what Dr. Bell ordered. He told me the patients were too nervous to have visitors. He is no doctor, Nancy told her, and I find it hard to believe Miss Tyson is a real nurse. The hard-faced woman shot her a venomous look. The police will find out about them all, Lieutenant Mulligan said grimly. At that moment, 2 helicopters appeared, lights flashing. They landed on the field, and the rotors were silenced. Last stage of Nancy's plan, Ned said. Reinforcements. Okay, called the state police officer to the arriving troops. Load this gang in the copters and take them away. An hour later, Nancy had the biggest thrill of the evening. As she walked into the Cornings' living room with her father and the boys, she saw Mrs. Eldridge seated in a big chair with little Marie asleep on her lap. At one side stood the child's mother, on the other a tall stranger. Nancy, the old woman said. Oh, Nancy, the old woman said happily. This is my nephew John. Nancy Drew is the girl who... Tears filled her eyes and she could not go on. Yes, he said. Nancy Drew has done a wonderful job. Thank you, Nancy. The hospital called, said Mrs. Corning. Morgan will be all right. We're so grateful to you for clearing up the mystery about him. Will you take him back? Bess asked. Of course. He is honest and faithful. We knew his true story. There can't be any more trouble. Nancy thanked her friends for helping her. She gave Bess and George each a squeeze and quickly excused herself to change her clothes. When she came downstairs, Mrs. Corning had a tray of tempting food waiting. Oh, good, said Nancy. Supper was a long time ago. I'm famished. While everyone ate, Mrs. Eldridge told what she had learned while a prisoner at Larkspur Lane. Tucker, whose real name was Van Hofwitz, was an international confidence man. The sanatorium was his idea, she said. He made Bell a partner, and he was to pass as a doctor. Thorne had put money into the venture while in prison. As soon as he escaped, he joined the others. Mrs. Eldridge went on to say that von Hofwitz ingratiated himself into various social circles. That's weird. They spelled von differently. Like, they first spelled it V-A-N, and then they spelled it V-O-N. Consistency, people. He would introduce the fake doctor to wealthy ladies who complained of old age. I see now how silly I was, Mrs. Eldridge said. I was taken in by their suave manners and my own vanity. She revealed that the unscrupulous pair would persuade the women to go secretly to the sanatorium. There, using drugs and threats, Bell prevailed upon the patients to sign away large parts of their wealth to him. Mr. Drew spoke up. Thorne is a very sharp lawyer, and no doubt the contracts he drew for you women to sign seemed harmless enough, but could not be changed, even if your relatives tried to break them. But your courage, Mrs. Eldridge, said Nancy, helped to put an end to the whole scheme. There are 2 questions I hope you can answer, she added. Why did the gang use bluebells in the code? Because Bell was so conceited, he wanted his own name in it. Blue, of course, was the color of the flowers growing so profusely around the estate. And why was the pigeon released from the plane? Tucker was flying from the mansion to an appointment with an old woman in Pennsylvania that day. He let the bird go on the way so that it would reach his estate more quickly. Thank you, Mrs. Eldridge, for the answers to my questions, Nancy said. And now I'll go upstairs and get your bracelet for you. No, dear, said the old lady. I want you to keep it as a memento. Memento. How wonderful, Nancy hugged her. Mr. Corning spoke up. And I am going to order French crystal earrings in the form of tiny larkspurs for you and the other girls. Oh, how exciting, Bess exclaimed. Thank you very much. George grinned and added her thanks. George couldn't care less, right? Nancy protested that she wanted no reward. I'm just happy everything turned out right. Ned grinned. If I were to give Nancy the reward she'd like best, I'd hand her another mystery to solve. But it was not Ned who would bring the clue of the broken locket to Nancy, though he was to play a part in the strange case. I'll find you a mystery by tomorrow morning, he promised jokingly. And I'll be ready for it, Nancy said with a twinkle in her eyes. But make it very, very complicated and original. That was the best ending yet. Oh my gosh, that was great. That was so tense. Like CJ, that was the right word for that. I don't know where the cat is. I guess she got tired. She gave up on me. Wow, that was really good. I can see why this was your favorite. They really like to jab me with those titles. Okay, let me see. Yes, hello, Evren. I don't know if I'm saying your name right, but welcome for joining. Thanks for coming in. Hope you enjoyed the last bit of the stream. I'll have to watch the clips later. Will you post the clip in Discord, Riddy? Okay. Packs up my double pun and stores it away. Okay. No, don't pack it away. It's too good for that. I'm legitimately upset about the heads not going in the jar. What was that about and where are they now? I don't know. I missed it. I feel like I need to sweep the floor. I need to sweep the floor because Boo's litter is everywhere. We need a litter mat. Into the void like inside my head. Don't worry, those bits are headstrong and fine. Kitty, escape. Void's going head to head on puns today. Done almost nothing today, but I want to get in my bed and sleep. I know exactly what you mean, CJ. I've felt like that all week. So I'm right there with you. This is more intense than I'm giving a reaction to. Wait, is this how carrier pigeons work? You give them verbal instructions? In Nancy world. I think you do, don't you? I don't know. Look it up. Welcome for barreling. Poor Scooby-Doo and his reputation. Right? Great. That's the thing I don't like about this book. Great Danes do not... They're not evil and out to get people. They should have used like a German Shepherd or something, because like that's a dog that's trained to do that kind of thing, even though they can be friendly too. So. My Wi-Fi can't take the 1080. I don't even think mine's 1080. I don't think it's good enough for that. Yeah, mine cannot either, but I have it on auto. I'm not sure if maybe that's doing something. Doesn't seem to make a difference for me. I think I like this book so much and remembered it for a while because it's so over the top. Yeah, but it's really good. Like, it's very organic the way, you know, because some of them it's just like, oh, how convenient. There happens to be this that Nancy can use to get out. But, like, this was very organic the way she got out and everything. And it was pretty, like, ingenious. So, I don't know, it felt more natural to me. Even though it was, like, over the top. But, yeah, it's memorable and it's good. He also went to the courthouse and changed his name between paragraphs. I'm at least not opposed to continuing to say it's my favorite of the books until I actually read them again. Probably did more today than usual, which is sad because it wasn't much. German Shepherds are trained to be... No, that is not what I said! They are trained to, like, be police dogs and stuff, and they sniff drugs, and, like, they have targets, and they can growl and be menacing, you know, but it's all what you train a dog for. I mean, if you train them to be a family dog, they're going to be a family dog. But at the same time, there's no way you're going to train a golden retriever to be evil, because that's just not possible. Yeah, that is not what I said. Okay, I need to go, but thank you all so much for being here. I had a lot of fun, and stay tuned on Discord for an update about my next read stream, because I'm going to be reading The Nutcracker by, not the E.T.A. Hoffman story, it's an adapted version by Alexandre Dumas, the French writer. I don't know how to say his first name. It's probably Alexandre. I don't know French. It's not what I said, Rudy. Maybe Saturday, if we get snowed in and I don't have anything else to do, maybe I'll, like, spend all day reading it, or as much as I can get through. I don't know. But yeah, I will keep you guys posted. Thank you for being here. I love you all. Have a good weekend, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.